Still, the number of lives lost here so far is almost certainly vastly underreported.
This is CNN Breaking News.
At the Simapuri crematorium, the loss weighs heavily in the smoldering air, and the dead are piling up.
There are bodies literally everywhere you turn here. I've honestly never seen anything quite like it. And the organizers say that pre-COVID, they might cremate 7 or 8 people a day. Today alone, they've already cremated 55 bodies, and it's not even lunchtime.
Just months ago, India's leadership boasted that the country had effectively defeated COVID. Now it has set global records for new cases as a terrifying second wave ravages the country. Jitender Singh Shunti says he and his men don't even stop to take breaks. And still, they can barely cope with the flow. A volunteer approaches. They've run out of tables for the bodies, he says, then adds that his mother died from COVID the night before. So India's capital continues to burn, suffocated by the rampant spread of this deadly virus. A city and a country brought to its knees, praying for respite.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there.
Mass cremations begin in India as coronavirus deaths in the capital of New Delhi soar. If this continues, they say they would have no other choice but to cremate bodies on the road.
There probably is no more graphic an illustration of just how bad the coronavirus crisis is hitting India than this. This is a makeshift crematorium. It's actually not meant to exist. This has been set up by the residents around here who cannot cope with the number of dead. Behind me are all the funeral pyres that represent a mother, a father, a daughter, a son, an uncle, a loved one to someone, a friend to someone. Each one of those fires is a coronavirus death. And we have been watching in just the last few minutes alone, they've been coming in virtually every second. They simply can't cope. And this is not one of the official funeral sites. This is an ad hoc one. Yeah.
कोई गरीब आदमी हो तो कैसे सरवाइव कर पाएगा। आज जो हम लाश अपनी जो ससुर साहब का लाश जो जला रहे हैं, इसके लिए हमको 12,000 रुपया पे करना पड़ा है। और इतना ही नहीं, पैसा तो ले ही लिया, लाश वैसे कुछ लकड़ियां डाल करके जला करके चल दिया। फिर हम उनको ढूंढ रहे हैं कि भाई लाश जली ही नहीं है, 4 घंटा हो गया, कहाँ आए आप। तो बड़ी मुश्किल से फिर उनको पकड़ कर लाए, तो ये 4 लकड़ी उन्होंने लगाई है और अभी तक लाश जल नहीं पाई है और कोई देखने वाला नहीं है।
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into a hospital in India. There's a very big distress there. The doctors are running up and down and many people flooding into the hospital.
At this crematorium in Delhi, the bodies lie in the heat for up to 20 hours. And there are more waiting behind these in parked cars driven by grieving relatives. The funeral pyres are so busy that families crisscross India's capital looking for any available space, some of them renting fridges to stop their loved ones from decaying. At another crematorium in the city, there are at least ambulances available to ferry the dead, though they are piled high inside. and then another queue for hours before they can be burned. India's official death toll is nearly 200,000 now, and these fires are constant, perhaps the most damning indictment.
The local health inspector ordered a public park to build 20 additional cremation platforms, but it's still not enough.
These are all the remains of human beings who've been unable to be properly mourned by their families and friends, who've been taken mostly, almost entirely, we're told, victims of the COVID pandemic that is rapidly coming to the stage of representing something that is almost biblical in scale here.
We can just see behind you so many piles burning. Just give us a sense of what you're seeing, and again, a warning to our viewers that you might find some of these images disturbing.
Well, Linda, just in this area alone, it's about the size of 3/4 of a football pitch. There are close to 50 pyres burning. This crematorium believed it would probably process about 150 bodies today. There's estimated about 600 people dying every day here in New Delhi, but the truth of the matter is the numbers must be much higher. In this crematorium, the dead actually have to join a queue before they can be seen, before they can be given their last rites. People accompanying them have to take a ticket, like you would going to see the doctor or getting a bank appointment, wait their turn, and then they will be brought out to one of these locations. Ghee, which is a butter-like oil substance, poured on them, the wood piled on top, and they're given their last rites. Very often, excuse me.
Bodies suspected to be of COVID-19 victims have been found floating in the Ganges in the states of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh.
Nearly 2,000 bodies have been retrieved from India's river Ganges by authorities in 2 states.
Dead bodies were seen buried in Unnav's Buxar Ghat in UP.
Decomposed bodies were seen floating in Ganga River in Bihar's Buxar district. The bloated bodies later piled up on the banks of Ganga in Chausa village. Bodies are directly thrown instead of being cremated. The disposal of dead bodies has once again raised questions over the sensitivity in handling and exposing hundreds to the deadly virus.
Dogs prying on some, and in the middle of it, some cremations continue. Sitaram Chaudhary and his son Sriram were starting their fishing routine on May 10th, but when they saw countless dead bodies covered in shrouds floating, they called off their day.
There are still dead bodies, bloated, decomposed, visible on the banks of this Chausa Ghat.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people summoned to the hospital. I see the lack of equipment now. There's no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
A capital on its knees. Consecutive day, India has set a global record for daily infections and deaths. But health experts believe the real numbers could be much higher. For every 200 patients, only one doctor was available.
So we are struggling.
So many like her are putting in all they can.
India's healthcare system is at a breaking point. Unable to cope with the scale of the crisis, its people left to fend for themselves.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people summoned to the hospital. I see the lack of equipment now. There's no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
This is CNN Breaking News.
India is experiencing the world's worst coronavirus outbreak. Today is the 5th day with more than 3,000 reported deaths in that country. Even as help pours into India from the U.S. and other countries, India is struggling to give basic medical care to those who need it. CNN's chief international correspondent, Clarissa Ward, is live for us in New Delhi. She went to India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh, to see the crisis firsthand. And Clarissa, we should warn our viewers that what you're about to share with us is really upsetting at times. Tell us what you saw.
It really is, Jake. We visited a government-run hospital in Uttar Pradesh. Some 200 million people living in that state. It's one of the hardest hit states, and the scenes we saw were absolutely harrowing.
A man wails in anguish, but no one is listening. His cry, just one of many at this hospital in Uttar Pradesh state. Inside the entrance, his son Deepak is fighting for his life. Gasping for air, his body convulsing. There are no doctors attending to him. The handful of medical staff working in this ward are stretched thin to breaking point.
This hospital is completely overwhelmed. The doctors say that they have about 55 beds, and currently they're treating more than 100 patients. And you can see people are literally just lying on the floor, desperately hoping to get some medical attention.
32-year-old Kavita says she's been here for 4 days, begging for oxygen that has not come. I'm getting anxious, she says. No one is listening to me here.
Are you struggling to breathe?
I'm unable to breathe freely, she tells us. No one is taking care of me. In the next room, more than 20 patients are packed in tightly. This is what now passes for the intensive care unit. Family members have taken on the role of primary carers, where medical staff are simply unavailable. Suddenly, there is a commotion. Will someone please call the doctor? This man shouts. His mother, 55-year-old Rajbala, appears to be slipping away. Her sons work furiously to revive her. A doctor comes in and tells them to stop crowding her. But the family is inconsolable. We've been here for 6 days, and only today we got the ventilator for my mother, he tells us. The oxygen is out. We had to bring an oxygen cylinder. It's a story we hear again and again. One man approaches us pleading. His wife can't get a bed. No one's listening to me. I've tried everything, he says. Please help me or she will die.
I'm not a doctor. I'm so sorry. I can't help you.
Another man tells us his wife is struggling to breathe outside. But they won't let her in. We spot the hospital administrator and ask him what's going on. Says they are desperately short of staff. Those who do work here risk becoming patients themselves. These men tell us they move a dozen bodies a day. We hear screams coming from the ICU. Rajbala has flatlined again. Her son desperately pumps her chest. A doctor comes in. He takes her pulse. But it's too late. This time, there is no point in trying to resuscitate her. The agony of her sons is shared by so many in this country. Failed by a healthcare system on the brink of collapse, and a government accused of mismanaging this crisis. Rajbala's body is left for nearly an hour before it is finally moved.
And you see it there, Jake. I mean, shortages of everything, shortages of beds, shortages of drugs, shortages of oxygen. But perhaps the most pronounced shortage that we saw on the ground was a shortage of medical personnel. 5 doctors and nurses were responsible for looking after all those more than 100 people in that COVID ward. And today, the Indian government has come out and said that they are actually going to draft in final year medical students to try to backfill some of the void and help tackle this crisis. But listen, it's going to be an uphill battle, Jake, and the peak hasn't even hit yet of this vicious second wave.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment now. There's no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
The waiting room at the Guru Tegh Bahadur Public Hospital is a sea of desperation, crammed with people defying Delhi's strict lockdown to seek help.
Hospitals are being forced to turn away the sick and dying.
Recently in Delhi, a group of people turned on medics and security guards at a hospital after they discovered a 67-year-old relative was denied an ICU bed and instead died in a hospital waiting room. Similar scenes are playing out across the country. There's been anger south of Delhi when people have turned up at a hospital only to discover their relatives have died because there is not enough oxygen. Doctors say they don't have oxygen, they don't have beds, and they don't have medicines.
What do I do? Once there is no bed here, no physical space, as you can see, to put another trolley, what do? We can only do that much.
बड़े भाई थे 38 साल के रिकवर हो गए थे, ऑक्सीजन पे थे, मेरे सामने तड़प के ऑक्सीजन की मशीन बंद हो गई, कुछ नहीं आ रहा था, मेरे सामने तड़प के खत्म हुए.
A hospital in the western city of Bhavnagar. These are COVID patients and there are no doctors to look at them, says the man filming the video.
पेशेंट यहाँ पे नीचे लेके लेटा हुआ है, कचरा वहाँ पे पड़ा हुआ है सामने. ये डेड बॉडी कल शाम से यहाँ पे.
India's healthcare system is crumbling under the pressure of a massive COVID-19 outbreak, that's killing thousands of people each day. Hospitals in the Indian capital of New Delhi have reached capacity. There is simply no space left to treat patients. As cars are converted to beds and sidewalks to morgues, health officials are telling families they'll need to obtain their own oxygen and medicine. Supplies have run out.
As India struggles with a catastrophic second wave, heartbreaking scenes playing out outside hospitals in the national capital. The tragic human face of the COVID crisis visible in the folded hands, desperate cries for help, and the heart-wrenching screams when all is lost.